Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm gonna be talking about Popol and Kupa, one of the strongest and most annoying marksmen in the game. In this video, I will also talk about how Popol and Kupa works in full details, which includes his passive, skills, builds, emblems, along with some tips and guide on how to use him in a match. So, without further ado, let's get started with the video. Popol and Kupa are a unique duo with a special set of skills, and what makes them special is that they can be played as the hyper and also as the marksman. But mastering him is no easy task, especially if you don't understand his skills properly. So, in order to master Popol and Kupa, you must first understand how his passive and skills work. So let's start with his passive. Before we begin, if you guys are new to this hero, then here are a few things you must know. Popol is the main hero which you control, and his dog is called Kupa. And even though you can't control Kupa, he will attack whatever Popol is attacking. In short, if you attack the turret, his dog will also attack the turret. Now, let's begin with his passive. With the help of his passive, whenever Kupa attacks an enemy hero or creep 3 times, the next basic attack of Popol will get enhanced. And you can see the amount of times Kupa has attacked an enemy hero above Popol's health bar. And Kupa has 2500 max HP in total. And Kupa inherits 100% of Popol's other attributes, including the unique passive of items. And Kupa can also trigger the unique passive of defensive items like Dominance Ice and Cursed Helmet. And to put that into comparison, Dexter the monkey, who's the companion of Claude, only inherits 30% of attack effects from Claude. But Kupa, on the other hand, inherits 100% of Popol's attack effects, and that's pretty broken in my opinion. Now, let's talk about his first skill. With the help of his first skill, Popol throws a spear at the target enemy, dealing 80 physical damage while simultaneously commanding Kupa to lunge at the target, dealing an additional 100 physical damage. Kupa will continue to attack the target for 3 seconds. This is your bread and butter skill, and most of your damage comes from Kupa, whose base damage numbers exceed your auto attack. So make sure to max out this skill first, as you can use this skill to poke and chase the enemies. And this skill can also be used on turrets. Now, let's talk about his second skill. With the help of his second skill, Popol summons Kupa back, gaining a shield while dealing 240 physical damage to nearby enemies, and also slowing them by 35% for 0.5 seconds. Since Popol does not have repositioning abilities, this is your go-to spell when a melee hero or assassin jumps on you. Remember, always make sure to use this skill whenever an enemy is directly attacking you. And if used in the correct timing, this skill can greatly increase the chances of your survivability. You might not think much about this skill, but this skill is a lifesaver during teamfights. Plus it also summons Kupa back to you, giving the chance to fight back against the enemy. Now, let's talk about his third skill. With the help of his third skill, you can set a trap at a target location that will detonate once an enemy hero walks over it, dealing 70 magic damage to enemies that walk on it, and also immobilizing them for 1 second. This skill is very useful as you can add these traps in the bush, and even if the enemies don't step on the traps, it will still give you vision over the bush, allowing you to avoid being ambushed by the enemies. And you can also use the battle spell Arrival on one of your traps, which is quite useful in my opinion. Now, let's talk about his ultimate skill. With the help of his ultimate skill, Popol and Kupa enter the enraged state for 12 seconds, gaining 15% extra movement speed and increasing their attack speed to 1.3 times. And during this enraged state, your first and second skill will also get enhanced, increasing your overall damage potential. And your enhanced first skill will stun the enemy for 1 second, and bite them 3 times in quick succession, dealing more damage. And your enhanced second skill will knock the enemies airborne for 0.2 seconds. and the shield and damage from his enhanced second skill is also increased by 120%. So it pretty much means that both his enhanced first and second skill can stun the enemy, which is quite useful. And Kupa also gains 1500 extra max HP during this stage. And he also grows larger in size, since his ultimate increases your attack and movement speed during the enraged state. You don't have to worry about having to buy attack speed items, allowing you to focus on buying items that increase your overall damage. And this is what separates Popol and Kupa from other marksmen, as most marksmen rely on attack speed in order to deal damage, whereas Popol and Kupa don't need to buy attack speed items. Now, let's talk about his builds and emblems. For Popol, since he relies on his basic attack in order to deal damage, you must go for items that will increase your overall damage. And for that, this is the best build for him. This build will increase your overall damage, increasing your killing potential. And for his battle spell, you can go for Flicker. Flicker will allow you to escape from sticky situations. Plus you can also use Flicker to chase the enemies. Now, let's talk about his emblems and talents. For his emblem, go for the Assassin emblem, as it is the most suitable emblem for Popol and Kupa. And for his first talent, go for Fatal. Fatal will provide you with plus 5% critical chance, and it will also increase your critical damage by 10%. And for his second talent, go for Weapon Master. Weapon Master will increase the physical attack you gain from items, emblems, and talents by 5%, increasing your overall damage potential. And for his core talent, go for Quantum Charge. Quantum Charge will increase your movement speed by 30% for 1 second whenever you hit an enemy with your basic attack. Now, let's talk about his gameplay and how to use him in a match. As I have mentioned before, Popol and Kupa can be used as both the jungler and also as the marksman. And in this video, I'm gonna be using him as the marksman, and if you guys want me to make a video about him as the jungler, then make sure to let me know in the comments. Now, let's talk about his early game. During the early game, make sure to unlock your first skill first, as your first skill is your main source of damage. And during the early game, you should be able to defeat almost every marksman in a 1 versus 1 fight. And since Popol has a long range, you must take that to your advantage and keep poking the enemy using your first skill. But remember, you must not let Kupa die during this stage, since Popol becomes really vulnerable without Kupa, so always make sure to use your second skill to call Kupa back. And even though Kupa can be resurrected, it still takes a lot of time to resurrect him, so it's better to call him back before he gets killed. And always make sure to use your third skill to set traps on the bushes, so that you will be able to avoid being ambushed by the enemies. And remember, it's very important to use his second skill during a fight, as using your second skill will give you a shield, which greatly increases the chances of your survival. So, your early game priorities should be farming, reaching level 4, setting traps in the bush, and poking the enemy marksman. Now, let's talk about his mid-game. During the mid-game, you should have at least 1 or 2 of your core items, depending on your farm. And this is the stage where Popol and Kupa start to shine the most. And during this stage, make sure to constantly keep an eye on the minimap. And if possible, try to support your team by joining the teamfights, as your presence alone is enough to change the outcome of a teamfight. And remember, Popol and Kupa can be countered using heroes like Clint, Ling, Melissa, and Kagura. So make sure to be careful when playing against these heroes. And Popol can also be countered using items like Twilight Armor, so you must also keep that in mind. And aside from teamfights, you must also try to push the turrets as much as you can, as pushing the turrets is the main job of the marksman. Plus pushing the turrets during the mid-game will make it easier for you during the late game. And remember, the way you play during the mid-game will decide the outcome of the late game, so always make sure to give your best during the mid-game. Now, let's talk about his late game. During the late game, Popol is one of the deadliest marksmen in the game, and you should easily be able to burst down most of the enemy heroes. But if the enemies are smart, they will not take a 1 versus 1 fight with you, and they will instead try to kill Kupa first, since Popol becomes very vulnerable and easy to kill once Kupa is dead. And remember, timing and positioning is the key to winning during the late game. So always make sure to wait for the perfect moment before joining a fight. And since you are the main damage dealer of your team, you should expect the enemies to keep targeting you during the late game. So you must never rotate alone, and you must constantly try to stay with your teammates. And as I've mentioned before, his second skill is very important during a fight, as it gives you a shield, increasing your chances of survival. So you must try to practice using your second skill during a fight. And also, you must never start a fight on your own. And you should always wait for your tank or fighter to start the fight. And make sure to always try taking the Lord whenever possible, as taking down the Lord could greatly increase the chances of ending the game. So, what do you think about Popol and Kupa? Make sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments, and consider leaving a like on this video. And subscribe to my channel if you're new. I make tutorials and informative videos about the game. Thank you for watching.